All right, well, let's get into part two of the Tim Pool and Sam Seder debate. I had to take a little break because, yes, it was 3 hours long. And the second I was like, oh boy, I saw that they went an hour over. I immediately, for some reason, I'm thinking of like the logistics of Sam's travel plans where I'm like, oh no, he might miss his flight. So that was kind of funny, but here we go. Let's just get back into it.
Like I've got to record 4 shows today. You know, and that's an impossibility with a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, like last week, I'm like, I can keep doing the morning show because that will keep me occupied.
You shut down your news operation too, didn't you?
Scanner is still in operation, but it's like,
didn't you have like a news like a website or something?
Yeah, we still do. And so there was we did Timcast News for a while, and then we had another company called Scanner that we were trying to get off the ground, and it's still there, but we're in a holding pattern. Content is still being produced for Scanner, but we have to figure out, like, here's the reality, man. News articles, the news media is a very, very difficult thing to monetize.
Very tough. Very tough.
You can write articles all day and night. You can send reporters on the ground, which we do, and then figuring out how to make that sustainable is incredibly difficult, and it gets to that point where, we can't. But I will say, in regards to what happened Monday, last week, oh yeah, so one of the offers we got was $30 million. And it comes with caveats. And so we go to these other companies and say, what are your terms? What are your offers? What are your terms? What are your offers? And then ultimately Tenet we were like, we'll go with them. That's whatever. We go to our lawyer goes through it. We say,
so right. Tenet didn't pay $30 million.
No.
Okay. So this is where I stopped. All right. So we're good. Let's go.
Sounds like they paid a hefty amount. I mean, if you're Dave Rubin, what do you think about that? Like, I mean, if you're Dave Rubin and somebody says, we're going to give you $100,000 a video, doesn't that like make you go like, what's up with this?
No, because what's interesting in the indictment is you can see that independent of each other, several people made the same negotiations. A lot of this goes through agents, and agents go to a market standard rate when you're negotiating.
I mean, I understand. I mean, I've dealt with agents, but I mean,
but you don't set your price. I mean, your agent's going to tell you what you're going to be able to get from something, right? Or do you go to your agent? You could go to your agent and say, I'll only do the job for this amount. I get it. But usually there's, it's going to be like, look, this is the kind of job that's going to pay in a range of here. The company's got this much. Here's what you're going to be able to get for it. So for instance, like 500,000 views might be $10,000 in ads, right?
Okay.
That's market standard. So if you're talking CPM and I call like an ad sales guy and they say, hey, this company wants to sponsor you, you get 500,000 on the show. They're going to give you $10,000. I can say, right, that's the market range. And so then I might try and argue a premium and be like, well, I'm Tim Pool, so I think you should give me 15. And then they'll come back and say, no.
We're not talking about sponsorships.
We're talking about the value of a license agreement where a company would have the ability to run sponsorships on their end.
Right.
So if we're talking about, say, Timcast IRL in the morning show, which we do around $1 million in revenue per month, then a comparable show is you're going to say this when you're licensing a show. If we run the show by ourselves for a year or two, then here's how much we're going to generate in sponsorships, memberships, et cetera, by the end of year 2, 3, 4, and 5. If we do a license deal, we jump the gun. We generate lesser revenue than we would in the long term, but it closes the gap sooner.
No, I get it. I understand why you would take it. I would take that money if somebody came to me and offered that, but I would be like, wait, what's going on here?
But yeah. you would be, I mean, we have 3 different companies coming at us. They're all known American enterprises. I mean, I will say one thing too, like,
well, it kind of flies in the face of what he was saying before in the last video where he was kind of talking like, well, yeah, I do pay attention, but I also don't.
Lauren Chen's was working at the Blaze. You know what I mean? This is not like some strange person appeared out of nowhere.
Raises questions to me about
the Blaze.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's quite clear to me that, there was reports about like in the run up to the election, George Santos was on a Zoom call where people were getting paid at least $20,000 to put out stuff that Kamala Harris was a slut on their social media and stuff like that. And I'm like, I've been doing this for 20 years. And, there's not a huge amount of competition on the left. Nobody's ever offered me $5 to do anything like that.
Let me let you in on the secret. This has been true for a long time. So your revenue for a Majority Report, is it largely YouTube based or do you do like ad reads as well?
It's ad reads, it's members, it's YouTube.
You have YouTube programmatic. So do we. Like programmatic ads means like your YouTube channel will show you how much you made from YouTube's ads.
Yes. Yeah.
So Russia.
Even I have that.
Can go on your YouTube channel through Google.
You guys don't get ads right now because I'm generous.
Ads and put.
And I also am not there yet.
$10,000 a month into your channel without you knowing.
Okay.
And you'd have no way to track or control any of that. So this.
It's okay. This
does happen though, where companies, politicians will use some kind of special interest, and you can run an ad for any product you want, which is the crazy thing.
Oh yeah, this is what.
Oh, That's cool.
Trump is doing with his watches, right? Like, I'm going to sell 147 watches at whatever it was, 10 grand a pop. And it's basically a way for people to launder money to him, because it's like, all right, I just bought a watch. And that's basically it. And so he knows.
You're allowed to buy watches.
I mean,
maybe we should regulate politicians selling products during elections.
I think that would be a great idea.
Let's
and
do
maybe
that.
while they're president as well. But I know
I bought
you
his
wanted
shoes.
What's that?
I bought his shoes. We were skating in them. Let's talk about like abortion or something. I don't know. Or
Well,
Israel.
we can talk about Israel if you want. I mean, I'm of the mind of, what we're doing is obscene, and I'm unhappy about it. And I feel like we have two options. One is horrible, and the other one's worse.
I agree.
In terms of these governments. I mean,
do you think we should cut off funding, pull out, and just be done with it?
Well, I think that we should condition aid to Israel. I mean, I think that we should, if we have leverage in any type of situation, we should exercise that leverage.
Yeah, I don't think Tim understands like geopolitics exactly. I mean,
in terms of
as much as it's like, yeah, let's just pull out of everywhere and just hoard our money. It's like, no, you kind of want your influence out there, because you know how you guys complain about that other thing, immigration? Well, that tends to come from, this whole disparity thing. And also when we're a world leader, it also kind of, I don't know, it almost seems like it's good to build up these relationships, but what do I know?
Of Ukraine, we had a treaty with them when they gave up nukes in '93, saying that we would protect them in the event of
was it a
Russian aggression? Well, or an agreement.
Right. And the legal distinction matters, I suppose, because...
well, I mean, it matters in terms of like how perhaps...
bilateral security agreement.
I mean, that's... you can refer to it as just a bilateral security agreement. And I think that there's...
Oh, no, it wasn't even that. The Budapest Memorandum.
I mean, I think that, this was...
Budapest.
Operational. It's not obviously, a treaty. Treaties can be broken. We saw that with Paris Accords, and well, it's easier obviously if it's a treaty. It needs to
see
be.
This? See this?
We need to bring the Senate in.
See that thing in the corner?
I am. I think that aid that we provide for Ukraine should have an exit strategy to it. I haven't seen one, but I also am not convinced that that's been a function of the election.
Haven't we spent more on Ukraine in the past 2 years than we have on Israel in 50?
I don't know.
Comparable.
Probably comparable, I think, at this
That's
point.
crazy to me. And it's fair to point out, too, like, we're not just giving all the money overseas. We make weapons here, and then it has American
100%.
jobs.
Yes, 100%. There's no doubt in my mind that we spend far too much money. So much of our economy is dependent. Eisenhower said, beware the military industrial complex, and his original wording was the congressional military industrial complex. And I subscribe to that. I do think from a moral standpoint, although I don't think this is controlling, but as a moral standpoint, obviously like one country is being invaded and to some extent occupied, and the other is occupying and completely asymmetrical type of situation, that we have in Israel is just absurd.
Tim's in a kind of really weird position on this, but it's not disagreeable.
I kind of feel like no matter what course we take, the dominoes have been knocked over. The BRICS nations are lining up for their currency. The petrodollar is on the verge of being dismantled. Saudi Arabia has already said not interested. I don't think Trump recovers that. And I think that means Americans better buckle up for a bumpy ride.
I mean, to be fair, you've also said that we're headed towards a civil war in this country so many, many times, and I don't think that's happening.
Well, that's not my opinion. That's just the corporate press. I think it was...
it's not your opinion that we're headed into a civil war, or we're headed...
It's not an original idea from Tim Pool that we're on track for a civil war.
Well, I mean, do either one...
No, not an original idea, but it's like after you read all this crap, then you kind of tend to agree with it.
Does us have any original ideas? I mean, I didn't come up with single payer.
No, but just to clarify, my position is I didn't one day just decide for no reason, oh man, I think a civil war's coming. It was like, here we go, Common Dreams. This is a progressive organization. Here you go. The second civil war has already begun. This is a progressive outlet, right? So when I read progressives, conservatives, The Atlantic,
I think that's more metaphorical. But if you want to claim that you did not mean that there was an actual civil war,
I do. Yeah, absolutely.
You do think there's going to be a civil war?
10 years, 20 years? I mean, what? Yes.
Sam. Blink, blink, blink.
Okay.
Do you so we can talk about it. We can go in great detail. For instance, we had a former CIA officer at write for the Washington Post. The U.S. is on the verge of a civil war. I didn't just make it up. The Atlantic said that they spoke with several national security experts.
Well, there's people also saying that the Earth is flat, but
do they work for the Democratic establishment?
Well, sometimes maybe I don't know.
Flat earthers in the Democratic Party at the top level.
I don't know.
Come on.
I'm saying
Like former CIA comes out and says they're concerned, like we are following the trend of other countries towards civil war. I take that seriously. I don't know why I would dismiss like all of these people. A Princeton professor, for instance, said the same thing back in 2018, I think. So when you
when it's the CIA, it's kind of like, well, then don't they have, I don't know, this whole agency to kind of stop it? And I don't know, we're kind of influencing things the other way.
Maybe it's sensationalism.
I think
that's fair.
I think to a certain extent, it's like, yes, there were people who said like crime has increased exponentially, but in fact, it hadn't. I mean, I think, part of what you and I do is we make assessments as to what news is actually sort of like, real and what really has real world implications for people. And part of what we do is assess that like these things don't, and it's a distraction.
I think you're wrong. I think there's an optimism and a normalcy bias. And the only thing I can really say is, look, I read the news and I opine on it, and I'm wrong about a lot. But I can probably pull up, I don't know, a couple hundred articles from CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, talking about the brink of civil war that is coming to this country that I just did not make up one day. So if I read the New York Times,
these are all right wingers.
The New York Times,
Ross Douthout,
sure,
it's an opinion piece.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. CNN, you've got Bruce Hoffman, Jacob Ware, Straight Arrow News. I don't know, but there's a poll saying people think we're on the verge of a civil war. The Princeton professor, progressive guy, said the cold civil war has already begun. This is back in 2018, and I look at all these things and I say, the worldview of each faction in the United States is divided to a degree that there seems to be no reconciliation. And so now what you have is sitting members of Congress calling for a national divorce, which means nothing. It means civil war. But that was Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, she's
a lunatic.
Well, call her whatever you want, but when a member of Congress...
Yeah, no, this is the thing. Call her whatever you want. No, you call her what she is, because if you start entertaining the fringe, then all of a sudden that becomes normal. That's on you. That's on everybody that just normalizes this crap. We're kind of guilty of normalizing Donald Trump and his craziness, and then, everything that followed it.
Congress is saying something like this. Would you?
I have no doubt. Listen,
do you think if lunatics get elected, we could see a civil war?
I have no doubt that we have a crop of right-wing Republican lawmakers who are completely nuts.
I think that the January 6th?
What about January 6th?
Do you think a January 6th type event could result in this country reaching civil war?
You mean had they been successful? And
let's to kind of depoliticize it. Let's say January 6th, 2025. Politician X wins. It could be whoever. I don't know. Let's for the sake of your politics, let's say Trump loses, and then Trump supporters storm the Capitol once again. This time taking the.
Do you really think? Wait a second. This is really an important distinction. Do you really think that the likelihood of a mass of Democrats, Democratic voters, would go in and attack the Capitol in the way that
you mean like they did on May 29th, 2020?
You're talking about like BLM?
When they firebombed the White House and forced the president to an emergency bunker and set fire to St. John's Church, injuring hundreds of police officers?
Oh, you're talking about the protests out there? You mean after there was a peaceful protest before the cops moved in?
Regardless of why it happened.
Well,
do I think the far left will firebomb the White House? They did 4 years ago.
But wait a second. One was an assault on the Capitol. The other is people. Well, words have meaning. They describe events.
When leftists injure 100 cops, tear down barricades, throw firebombs to the White House.
Wait. But you're sequencing things differently. If Donald Trump was to send the military to attack, let's say, New York City, do I think that we would have a civil war? Yes. Do I think that New York City
Do you think he could? Do you think there's a possibility Trump would send the military into any one of these Democrat districts?
I mean, I don't know. Well, I mean, he claims he would.
Do you think he would? Or do you fear he would?
I fear that he would attempt to do it, but I suspect...
You think he would try to start a civil war?
Well, I didn't say he would try and start a civil war, but
that would start a civil war.
Well...
Or could.
I think it could, but I don't
think there's a possibility civil war is facing the sound.
No. I don't think the military would allow for that, frankly.
National Guard, or it's like you think they would disobey Donald Trump?
I think you'd get a series of resignations. Possible, I guess, that at one point, but
someone eventually is going to say yes, right?
If your argument is that the rise of Donald Trump could bring about a civil war, I mean,
I don't know that.
Well, you know what that is? That's getting rid of what is it? Something.
I would say the rise of Donald Trump.
Something comitatus.
Trump. I think Trump's a symptom. I think that the reason Trump gets elected is because you have this rage.
It is the rule that keeps the military from being deployed on us.
Bubbling up in this country in a variety of ways. So you had the Tea Party and you had Occupy Wall Street, which were rather light. But then you get the Bernie Sanders movement, you get the Trump populist movement. But Trump is a bull, and he storms through and he takes the power. Bernie didn't.
But I mean, what's you're saying just because they're both populist movements? I mean, one's a right-wing authoritarian movement.
Call it whatever you want. People rose up and had movements for whatever reason. And perhaps you could say because Trump is a strong man, he ended up succeeding in his movement where Bernie's did not.
Well, I mean, no, Bernie Sanders was
like Hillary Clinton's the authoritarian, and she stomped out.
Posse comititis.
No,
wow, I can't talk today at all. Sorry. Glad that we get to listen to this mostly.
Hillary Clinton is not an authoritarian. I mean, I don't like her politics, but authoritarian it's a word. It means something. Yeah. And right-wing authoritarians. I mean, there's been, you could check out Bob Altemeyer's research, formerly from the University of Manitoba. Like there's clinical research that shows that we have like something like 25% of North America are right-wing authoritarians, and they were just looking for a leader. And the Republican Party has been stoking racial animus for decades now, and this is where
that lead to civil war.
I mean, it certainly did 200 years ago, but I think that the likelihood of civil war is low relative to the amount of times that you talk about it.
Well, I think it would require you to see what I talked about. Like, should I not opine on The Atlantic saying, quote, there's people that are absolutely ready to take on a civil war? What will happen?
Yeah, except the people answering this are usually these people that are damn near 300 pounds. They go and shoot their guns on the weekend and they're like, I'm ready for a civil war. I'm ready to go. And then all of a sudden it actually happens. And the second that they have to run for cover, they're just like, oh no, my sciatica.
Happen if Trump loses from 1 week ago? If I address that and I say something like, I think it's silly to assume that within the next few months, people are going to start a civil war, is that a bad thing to do? Or should we just ignore it?
I mean, I think it's just indicative of like what you consider the news is. And I think that's,
why are they all writing about it?
Well, because they have the same problem that you did with your news outlet is they can't get clicks.
Do you think the only reason all of these outlets, I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that I just pulled up from a quick Google search, it's just they're getting clicks for it? It's not a gotcha. I mean, literally, it's just sensational.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about the original Civil War, there was a huge economic investment on the two different sides, right? One side wanted free labor, and the other side, aside from having other economic interests too, that wasn't aligned with having free labor. I don't think we have that same division here. Does that
mean we need to follow 1861 or 54 for a civil war to happen, or is it possible to look at, say, the Bolsheviks, the Spanish Civil War, the French Revolution, the British Civil War?
I think it is unlikely in this country that we would have a civil war. Do I think that we could have sort of like a constitutional crisis with someone like Donald Trump and the Republican Party? Yes, I do.
So academics right now believe that we are in what's called civil strife. Civil strife does not guarantee civil war, but it is the precursor to. So the civil rights era was a period of civil strife that did not result in a civil war. Bleeding Kansas was civil strife that did.
I mean, in the 80s, we had something like 100 bombings, maybe 75 bombings. That would, various
civil strife. It comes and goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you've got Stephen Marsh, who wrote the book The Next Civil War. He's a liberal guy. He makes a lot of these predictions. I defer to him. I think he's wrong on a lot of his fact assessments in the granular scope of things, but he makes a lot of points that are correct. So we actually had this debate. I think it was it last week actually on civil war, conflict, and crisis. And one of the things I have to bring up is people try and look at the 1861 Civil War as if we must follow that trend for civil war to occur, when in fact it's rare that you actually get civil war.
What would you do to stop this civil war?
Tell people not to do it, to go out and vote.
I love how that's a solution. Tell people just don't do it. Don't civil war, guys. Just don't do it.
To believe in the system, to vote for who you think is going to help bring accountability to this country, denounce.
There's no difference in terms of the parties as to which one could bring about that could bring about a civil war.
I think both parties hold the potential for it.
Do you think that like Kamala Harris would?
Come on, man.
Takes two to tango.
Well, actually, it takes two to tango because a tango is a very intricate dance, but it doesn't take two people to start a war.
Yeah.
I mean,
it does.
No, it
actually takes one person to lead the dance.
Doesn't. I mean, well, it doesn't take two people to start a war.
So if country A invades country B, but country B just surrenders immediately, there's no war.
Well, Obviously, people
Or as a fight.
pushing. Yeah, I mean, I guess
it could be more than two, like Syria, for instance. I think there was like 12 factions in the initial.
Well, tango, both parties are like engaged in the dance. But the fact of the matter is that you can go in and yes, you can invade. It's war, even if they surrender after people getting shot. Do you think that like Kamala Harris? Let me put it this way: who's more likely to bring out the military against the city between Harris and Trump?
Trump didn't do it in 2020. I don't know if I have a good answer.
You don't have an opinion on that?
He tried to. He actually tried to, Tim. He couldn't.
I don't know if I have a good enough answer to say.
Well, I'll take whatever answer you. I mean, you don't have an
Trump
opinion.
was presented with national rights. He did not invoke the Insurrection Act. He didn't send out the military. I'm not confident he has the strength, and I don't mean that in a positive way.
Who would be more inclined to do it?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Actually,
you don't have an opinion on it.
I mean, I think it's bait to be like Trump's the authoritarian, therefore he would, when he didn't do it. So the Democrats didn't do it at the Capitol. Trump didn't do it at the Capitol. Trump didn't do it in 2020. The National Guard was deployed by Democrats during the Ferguson riots. Could I make the argument that Democrats are more likely for that reason? I honestly have no idea.
Would you make that argument?
I wouldn't. I'd say there's pros and cons to make a guess as to who you think would be more likely to bring out the National Guard or invoke the Insurrection Act. Honestly, I don't know. What I will say is, it doesn't matter what you think is true. And
Mark Milley apparently, and I don't know. Mark Milley is someone that you would trust, but he basically said that Trump told him to just shoot the rioters.
I mean, Hillary Clinton said, "We came, we saw, he died. Why don't you drone strike Julian Assange?" So Barack Obama killed Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki.
Wait. Yeah, no. I agree that Obama, those drone strikes were very problematic, but that's different than saying we're going to willy-nilly fire into protesters.
What I'm pointing out is that I'm not going to tell you your opinions are wrong. You should not have them. That's not the point of what I'm getting at with civil war. My point is you believe them, and you are allowed to believe them, and that's fine by me.
I'm just curious as to who you think. I mean, if you think that there's going to be a civil war, or that there's a big potential for it, you don't see. There's no difference.
None. All right. So just from my little layman's understanding here, and I just did a quick little search. It seems that the Insurrection Act actually supersedes Posse Comitatus, which is insane. Under normal circumstances, the Posse Comitatus Act forbids the U.S. military, including federal and armed forces, from the National Guard, troops who have been called in the federal service, from taking part in civilian law enforcement. This prohibition reflects an American tradition that views military interference in civilian government as being inherently dangerous to liberty. Invoking the Insurrection Act temporarily suspends Posse Comitatus. Okay. That might... yeah. It is dangerously vague because it doesn't really say how temporary. So...
Between Trump and Harris as to the likelihood of a civil war or who would start this war. You don't...
In 2020, Democrats held a war game, as reported by the Boston Globe. Are you familiar with this? Where...
Yeah, I'm actually... familiar with this because specifically it was in response to a bunch of right-wing militias like the Proud Boys.
Podesta and others, neocons, had come together
in 2020.
Before the 2020 election, they held a war game, as reported by the New York Times and the Boston Globe, where they said in the event Trump wins, we should advocate for West Coast states to secede from the Union.
In 2020?
Yes. In 2020, before the election took place, a war game was held by prominent neoconservatives and Democrats, including John Podesta.
Oh, so you mean like a bunch of people who are out of government went into a room and
working on the campaign and said, what happens if Trump wins? And one of the proposals was Washington, Oregon, and California must secede from the Union unless Trump's government capitulates to our demands. And that was just the most insane thing I'd ever heard.
They're not just going through a bunch of different people out of government are just going around. So your argument,
you say out of government, but campaigning for the office of the presidency is a big difference, right? Podesta is a big shot in the Democratic Party. It's not like he's not in power. These are private organizations, Republican or Democrat.
Wait, what?
The issue I'm saying is this: by all means, tell me I'm wrong, believe all of it. But
I just think it's fascinating you don't have an opinion on this.
Well, because I hear you, and
I mean, you have this knowledge that some Democrats who are out of power.
You keep saying that, but John Podesta is far from out of power.
Well, I mean, in 2020, he wasn't in the government.
He's a big shot in the Democratic Party, and he's basically has a lot of say in who gets to run and who doesn't, and where funding comes from.
Okay, he had power within the Democratic Party, but he's
saying if Trump wins, we will.
Well, wait, did Panetta say this, or this just there's like 14 different scenarios that are being gamed out, and because they're doing the war game, this is one of them that happens in this sort of completely hypothetical thing.
Why do you think they entertained the possibility of West Coast secession? That's just stupid, isn't it?
Well, I mean,
it's a stupid thing for them to do.
I listen. Donald Trump had states competing over PPE during COVID. He completely abandoned this country at a time where there was a once-in-a-lifetime crisis. And
what if Trump steals the election?
To the extent that if Trump steals the election,
what do you think would happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot harder now. He doesn't have the reins of power, and on top of it, they've done a bunch of procedural court stuff. As much as a lot of people are saying this, like surprisingly not on like CNN and things like that, but MSNBC and like the left are totally, still spinning it that way. But
what do you mean by steal?
Let's say that Kamala Harris wins.
I just kind of feel like it's a lot harder than it was in 2020.
Is the popular here's a scenario that's playing out right now. Mississippi had a lawsuit. Fifth Circuit Court ruled that ballots received after Election Day, even if postmarked before, are illegal to count.
That stuff.
This would have to go to the Supreme Court for final adjudication. But one scenario that is potential because of this is that Donald Trump is winning on Election Day. However, mail-in votes have yet to be counted, of course. This is what happened in 2020. Then, when those votes come in, Republicans sue, going to the Supreme Court, which you believe is right-leaning, and the Supreme Court says...
Wait. I believe it's right-leaning? Do you not... believe it's right-leaning?
I'm not making a point about my or your belief. I'm saying...
What? You said you believe it's right-leaning. It's right-leaning.
And I will say, as you have stated, the court is right-leaning, okay?
Thank you.
So my point is this. If Kamala Harris is losing on Election Day, but it is perceived that she will win when mail-in ballots come in the following day, but the Republicans sue, citing the Fifth Circuit Court, it goes to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court rules all of those votes for Kamala, which would give her the win, are out. Trump is now the president, despite losing the popular vote and the Electoral College. What do you think happens?
Well, we have a model for this. It was the year 2000, where all of the legal establishment was shocked that the Supreme Court intervened and prevented Florida from counting all the votes. And to the extent that we, past performance is no guarantee of future performance, but the Democrats basically stood down.
Do you think Democrats would just stand down and let Trump come in?
I think I would be surprised if there
real quick
weren't like a massive protests, and I think we would see states attempt to
just aside. I got to get something like that. Just flash it, like share, subscribe,
more progressive, and become more sustainable and not rely on the federal government as much. Yeah.
What if Trump sends in the military to start rounding up illegal immigrants?
Oh, I think that's going to be really.
That's going to be bad.
In addition to being like a
you think
horrible
troops are putting people on buses and trains, the Democrats will just stand by and say,
"Dude, that's where Alex Jones loses his effing mind." Trust me, he's been talking about the whole putting people onto trains thing for a while. If they start doing that, especially with the military, holy crap! Even Alex Jones is gone at that point, and he's at what point will they just go? Maybe we are a little fascistic.
I mean, if the Supreme Court basically says it's okay to deploy the military in the United States, I think that could be a problem. Now you've just given me that scenario. Would you imagine Kamala Harris doing the same thing? Do you think that she would send the military to deport 11 million people?
No. She said she wants to recently. She said people who enter illegally will be quickly and immediately removed. I think.
Well, of that 11
that's at the port of entry.
million people, 80% of them have been here for over 10 years. So, so how is it where you can so easily work up a scenario
where Donald Trump
instigates a civil war, but you can't with Kamala Harris that you think they're the same?
Why do you say I couldn't?
All right, well, give me one.
So first of all, I don't really put a lot of weight on Kamala Harris. Right? She wasn't elected. The Democrats voted for her, so she was.
Well, I mean, it's either going to be her or Donald Trump as the president.
So with Trump in office, Trump is screaming at the top of his lungs, telling people what to do. With Kamala in office, she's surrounded by intelligence officials, military officers, and what we've seen thus far is the arrest of lawyers. The arrest of
lawyers.
Donald Trump's lawyers were arrested
for
what's her face? Jenna Ellis, was that her name? She got charged with RICO for simply being Trump's lawyer.
No.
Really? That's did it hold up in court?
She ended up, I think she pleaded guilty. She ended up crying on TV, apologizing for having done it. They included her in RICO because she filed paperwork on Trump's behalf for his election claims.
Oh, because she knew they were false.
No, I don't think that was what she was charged with. She was charged with RICO counts 1 and 2, which was participating in
a conspiracy to steal the United States.
Yep.
And so the issue then becomes, if you're a lawyer and you are retained by someone who says, here's the argument I want to make, and you go, okay, then they criminally charge you for it. That's a huge step over.
Well, if you're involved in fraud, then
that's actually no. Lawyers are not. They're not just like. Oh my God!
Yes, that's always been.
I've been having this.
Is this the first time that a lawyer has ever been subjected to something like that in a fraud case like that?
Not sure, but his other lawyers got charged too in Wisconsin. So it's You know what? By all means, Sam.
Wait.
Go ahead and tell them she deserves it. Say she deserves it.
She deserves it.
Okay, now, what do you think Trump supporters will respond with when they see Trump's lawyers, former staffers, Navarro, Bannon being put in prison?
Certainly, supporters don't like, people being going to jail. But I mean,
why didn't Merrick Garland go to jail for contempt of Congress?
Why didn't he go to jail for contempt of Congress?
Yeah.
What you mean from the Justice Department?
Yeah. Was it the her investigation or was it? I'm getting the name wrong. He was held in contempt of Congress, I think, twice.
There's been a lot of people who've been held in contempt of Congress who haven't gone to prison.
So the issue right now is Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon go, and when Merrick Garland defies Congress, he does not.
I think government officials probably get away with this more because we had we had members of Congress who also.
It's a fine argument.
But wait.
It's a fine argument. But
we're getting off the original question was.
And the question is, do you think Trump supporters are going to accept this as true, that it's just government officials getting...
I don't know. I've seen Trump supporters believe a lot of very strange things, like John F. Kennedy is in the Junior is in the audience. I mean, so I have no idea how to predict. But again, the question I ask: do you think can you come up with a scenario where Harris instigates a civil war in the way that you talked about with Trump doing it?
The Harris administration, yes.
Okay, and let me hear it.
The expansive arrest and prosecution of Donald Trump, his supporters, and those associated with his movement.
Well, Bannon went to jail and Navarro went to jail, and there was no civil war.
Yeah.
Why would that right now, as an election is looming? So another example would be, let's say...
Actually, no. With the election looming, that's actually a better point to counterpoint yourself, is the fact that they didn't riot when this happened during the election season.
Donald Trump actually is losing on election day, and votes are going to come in, and they sue and get his votes disqualified. Or how about this? And you keep saying Harris.
Democrats don't do
Smash that like button.
that.
But Democrats don't challenge elections.
Eh?
No, they challenge elections, but
Are you subscribed yet? If you're not,
I mean, Democrats don't.
I got plenty of content now. Come on.
Disenfranchise. Republicans have an extensive history of that.
And share it.
So
I also really appreciate you guys watching this.
the factor right now is what we are seeing with the current political establishment. I don't think it's Joe Biden. I think the way the Democrats have operated is an administration. Trump is unique in that Trump is Trump. Trump's in charge. Trump tells people.
Oh my God! Seriously?
You don't think Trump is screaming at people and telling them what to do?
I got news for you.
You think Trump has got military advisors that he trusts and listens to?
Oh no! There's no doubt. No, we're not in agreement. Donald Trump is going to outsource so much of all his picks were picked by the Heritage Foundation for the Supreme Court. There is a huge between Russell Vogt, who was not only one of the architects of Project 2025, but he was also the chair of the Republican Platform Committee. They have outlined their entire program to dismantle the administrative state. Donald Trump is not going to get involved in the micro parts of that. They're going to destroy the administrative state, like Steve Bannon said that he wanted to do at CPAC 5 or 8 years ago, whenever it was. And this time around, they've got a very laid out, meticulous plan to do it. They have binders full of people that they plan to hire to carry this out. And they're going to dismantle the administrative state.
I agree.
And all Donald Trump wants to make sure is he doesn't go to jail.
So there's two potentialities, and we'll keep them simple. Do you think that Trump supporters, his fans, his administration, the people you just mentioned, will just let the Democrats take over and put him in jail and do the things they want to do?
Well, I don't think Democrats are just going to put him in jail.
I'm not saying.
I mean, I think
will he let them for whatever reason? Let's say.
Yeah, you're also acting like there was nothing illegal done. Like what?
He's like legit.
You're acting like the Democrats just went after Peter Navarro for absolutely no reason.
Legitimately convicted of a crime. Do you think he's going to let him do it?
What do you mean? Let who do what?
Do you think in the event Democrats win, Trump supporters will just say, okay, we lost?
I mean, do I expect them to...
I don't know, January 6, 2.0.
Well, I think this time around, people are going to be a lot more attuned to the potential of that happening. So I think they're going to inhibit it.
Would that also include...
I also think that there's going to be, the Capitol is going to be essentially shut down on January 6th.
The people who would perpetrate it?
This is the first presidential election since 2020, so I don't think that they're going to really play this game.
Well, I'm unclear what you're saying.
If you're saying that people are attuned to expect a January 6th, would that not also include those who seek to perpetrate a January 6th? Meaning they will be prepared for countermeasures.
I mean, I guess that's conceivable, but I don't think that's a civil war at that point.
No,
I think
I
actually the way that I think there's going to be civil strife. I don't think there's going to be some mass movement. I think that once Trump, in the event that he loses, I think over time there's just going to be less interest in the guy.
So finally, I was just so hopeful that he was not going to run again, and then he did. And I was like, come on. We got to deal with this again.
You would say
I don't think he's going to run again in 4 years. He can barely stand now.
Do you believe that there is
literally
a single-digit probability of a second January 6th type event? Trump loses, and then his supporters come out in mass.
I think that, I mean, it's
like
conceivable that there's an event, but he doesn't have control of the government in this instance, where he did before. And so...
But people just showed up.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't government actors, the 200,000 who showed up in D.C. that day.
Well, I mean...
Yeah, but they can shut down the Capitol.
He planned a rally.
Yeah, he planned the rally.
On the ellipse. I mean...
He can tweet that out again, and it could happen again.
He could tweet that out, but there's not going to be a rally.
No.
He's not going to be able to have a rally there. He's just not going to get a permit.
No.
You think Trump supporters would not show up if he asked them to show up because he doesn't have a permit?
It's not going to happen. And even if they tried, then they would be shut down, because at that point they will have enough policing that they won't be able to congregate. So it's completely moot, dude.
I think there would be a lot less. Yes, without a doubt.
So,
people thought there was going to be riots down at his courtroom appearances in New York City, and there
were like 6 people.
There was not many people at all.
So when
I really do think that he is more of a paper tiger now. Now, are there fringe groups like militias that get inspired by him and the Republicans? Yes, we've always had those, though.
What percentage of people fought in the American Revolution?
How many
what was the percentage of the American population that actually fought?
I mean, we had 500,000 deaths, I would say, in the 1860s. I don't know. Maybe 10%?
I think 10's the academic number. There's a lot of people. Have you heard of the 3 percenters?
It's some right-wing militia group, right?
And that name comes from 3% of the American population fought in the American Revolution. So academics lean more towards like 10% or so. But the important factor there is it does not take very many people at all to instigate civil war. It takes actually only a couple. And that creates a scenario where dominoes...
And do you think that's more likely to happen with people on the right or on the left in this country?
In different ways equally. But there's a substantial difference.
Different ways equally?
Yes.
So you think it's the same probability that it would come from the left as it would the right?
I don't know. I could calculate probabilities. I can say that the left
has already created several autonomous militias are there?
Yeah.
Hundreds?
Hundreds of left-wing militias.
The John Brown Gun Club or the Red Guard, two prominent ones. Yeah. Rose City Antifa may not be a militia, but they certainly did participate in taking over.
You've got 2 militias. How many people are in that? I mean, off the top of my head,
I don't even include Antifa.
Name,
sorry,
if
you cannot name the power structure, then I don't care.
The 3 percenters, the Oath Keepers, those Bundy folks.
That's not a militia.
There are.
How many can you name? 2?
Well, I mean, there's neo-Nazi groups.
He just don't
tell me I need to name them all.
I don't. Well, you can. I'm sure you can. I mean,
I actually can't. I can think of...
So you think there's the same amount of right-wing militias as there are left-wing militias?
I said that we've already seen the left take over several city blocks for months on end and kill people. And was it in Portland? How many people were killed? 2 or 3. In Provo, Utah, a guy ran up to a car and just shot a guy for no reason. That was reckless insurgency. In Minnesota, you had the George Floyd Autonomous Zone for like 2 years. In Atlanta, you had the Wendy's Autonomous Zone. You've had numerous attempts. I mean, in Seattle with the Chaz Chop, you had armed guards outside, took over a police station and killed people. They unloaded hundreds of rounds from rifles into a white SUV with 2 teenagers in it. So if we're going to ignore the wave of mass violence, the 36 deaths in 2020, and act like only the right is capable of violence, it's silly.
Well, we have data from this. We have data from the Department of Justice.
Sure, and it's
right-wing authoritarian
which one has the higher probability,
militias.
But we do know that both are capable, and we don't know to what degree is required to start.
You and I both know what the bulk of people who own weapons in this country. We can look at the Department of Justice, regardless of who has been head of the administration, and see that they have been saying for decades that these militias exist on the right, and they're far more prominent, they're far more dangerous.
But I never made an equivalence. I said no to that question.
You're not making an equivalence.
You asked me if I thought there was equal probability. I said no.
Oh, which has more probability?
Yeah, the right in 100%.
Oh, so the right. Okay.
I never said
agreement. All right, fine.
Right.
We both agree that if there is a threat from civil war, it comes from the right in this country.
That's an absolute statement that I didn't make.
Okay.
Probabilistically,
we both agree,
the right is a larger threat for destabilization than the left.
Why are you sort of like trying to obfuscate what you're saying? There's more of a chance if there's a civil war that it's going to come from the right than the left.
Agreed.
Okay, great.
Yeah, but I was never in disagreement on that.
Oh,
Not once in any of my content have I ever said that. The question is, though, what does it mean to instigate a civil war? What does it mean to be the first shot fired? These are deep academic questions that go back to historical conflicts where we try to determine what started the war, and then you get people making arguments about when it really started, when it didn't. A big question of the war in 1861 is, for us, we know it started with Fort Sumter, but at the time they didn't think civil war started until well after the fact. To the degree that the Battle of Bull Run, they were picnicking. Despite we know historically the Civil War started, they did not make the determination. So you could argue history is written by the victors. In the event that the right, and the reason why I say that there's a greater risk for civil war from the right
Except for the Civil War, that one is a little bit different because we do actually have a bunch of like, old school Confederacy types that they'll give you their version of history. So we actually have like a pretty rare situation there where we can look at both sides and then go, okay, well, this seems to be what happened.
They're the ones actively calling for national divorce, which is a mistake. They're the ones who are more likely to, January 6th, for instance, was bad. The left, while they riot and there is violence from them, it is what I would call blunt. Widespread, low impact. On the right, it's typically high impact, not as widespread. January 6th was a riot in one of the worst ways imaginable at a Capitol building during the election, the counting of the electoral vote, the certification. That's what I would call acute domestic violence.
And that was also really going towards the heart of a civil society, which is the peaceful transfer of power. I mean, to the extent that there were riots or protests, the idea was to change public policy, to show dissatisfaction with the police state or the state of policing. That is not a undermining of the fundamental principles of the way that the of basically undercutting across the board the political process.
The issue is that I see is that if you're saying something like the threat comes from the right, well, let's parse that down. There is a higher probability of instability or conflict arising from actions on the right because their actions tend to be acute. January 6th, sharp and extremely potentially dangerous. The left, however, does show a different propensity for violence, which we call blunt, obtuse. That is, the widespread riots of 2020 were not targeted at a Capitol building during an election, but they were substantially larger, resulting in around 30 or so deaths. I think we attribute around 20 plus to the direct riots, and then there were ancillary deaths as a result of the actions of the riots. There were the seizure.
I wish I could just see this information in front of me to just be like, yeah, but where did that information come from?
Of autonomous zones, like in Seattle. There's an attempt in Portland, Minnesota, Atlanta, and
attempts. They shut them down immediately. And actually, I thought the Portland one only wasn't that? Wait. I thought that there was something because of like the pandemic.
A civil war, you don't need only acute.
I'm remembering that one.
But it is a higher risk. That is, you will more likely hear on the news a guy goes into a church and shoots a bunch of people because of how extreme and psychotic it is. Though it happens substantially less than leftists punching someone in the head. Nobody really cares if a fight breaks out in the middle of Portland. We're not going to report on that. That's stupid. But if you get to the point where you get a Summer of Love 2020...
Are you kidding me? Hell no. No. Especially with Fox News. Like, the way that they dominate the news cycle, you don't think that they would jump on that? Come on, dude.
With a Donald Trump in office.
Especially in Portland, they're looking for that stuff.
This time around, he says, I'm sending in the National Guard. You may end up with conflict, civil strife, insurgency, instigated by left violence. Whereas with the right, you could get January 6 2.0, where they injure politicians.
I'm like sitting here in amazement to the extent that you have contemplated these things and have created this whole sort of like macro associated with it. That is, I think, like incredibly unlikely. A and B.
Like, I never said it was incredibly likely.
No, I know that. I'm amazed. One of the things that the last video, and we didn't get a chance to talk about Social Security. I think you had brought it up before the show. But,
I was reading Forbes.
But the one of the things that I'm amazed about is how, and I think this is sort of was my point about you bringing it up so much. I suppose I can understand why like the Atlantic wants to make an opinion piece on it because it's sort of like clickbaity stuff, but the depth in which you are, you go into these scenarios, which again, I think are incredibly unlikely. And also some attempt to create some type of equivalence, although you do concede that the probability is higher on this is going to come from the right, versus like Social Security.
Well, real quick, I'll answer your point before you get to Social Security. I do think it's a bit unfair for you to ask me why I think a thing and then get mad that I brought it up.
Well, no,
how could the left do this? Well, here's one way. Why did you even think of something?
You haven't answered that question.
You can ask me about quantum physics and
you just talking about like blunt violence.
I can help you.
Yeah, I mean, I think
we can talk about quantum physics and the organization of nature, entropy, and entropy.
No,
but if you don't ask me about those things, you can't get mad that I talk about the things.
No,
you ask me
I understand. I understand. I just said I was amazed at the depth in which you do that relative to how much little time you spend on something like just even learning the basics of something like Social Security, which essentially our government does three things. It is a war machine. And then provides Medicare and Social Security. I mean, just on a per dollar basis.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's fair to point out, as pertaining to Social Security, is if I'm going to read The Atlantic and comment on it, criticize me for having unoriginal thoughts. If I'm going to read Forbes and comment on it, criticize me for having unoriginal thoughts.
No, I don't think you should have original thoughts. I mean, the part of this job is not.
My point is, your issue with my take on Social Security is because I read The Atlantic and Forbes that day.
Well,
They were wrong, I guess. I don't know.
Maybe you misread it, but
I read Forbes saying that insolvency is coming and the system can't sustain itself because on average you need 2.8 to 4 workers to maintain a single recipient.
No.
And I said, well, hold on.
Who did you read? Wait, when you say Forbes, who was the writer?
Oh, pull up the video when we pull up the Forbes. Want me to pull it up?
I mean, one of the things that,
You keep referencing it. You probably should have that one ready.
I think, when you brought up, all the Dave Rubin videos I do, or we do a lot of videos about you, we got 230,000 views on that Social Security video. And I can tell you, I've talked about Social Security so many times, I've never gotten those type of numbers. But your presentation and lack of awareness about it gave me the opportunity to explain Social Security to 200,000 people that wouldn't do it. But it was stunning. That's the
You
thing.
do talk about me a lot.
Well, I mean, because of, honestly, in instances like that, like I say, no one's going to listen to a dry diatribe about Social Security. But when you come out with such misinformation based upon, I guess you read an article or two that day.
Indeed it is.
And it's literally one of the largest, like 1/3 of our government, at least in terms of dollars, is Social Security. And you read 2 articles that day in Forbes. You don't know by whom or what their perspective was.
Yes, I don't memorize every article I read.
I understand. But you then pontificate and say Social Security is a dumb idea. You don't realize that increase in productivity means that while it may have been, 2 workers for every 1 Social Security person back in the day, or I should say vice versa, 1 worker for every 2 retirees, now it can be 1 worker for every 4 retirees because of increase in productivity. And Social Security is not going insolvent. There's a trust fund that was established during the Reagan era, and that will last for another 10 years if we don't do anything else. But everything else in this country will go broke.
I'm in complete agreement with you as one of the challenges we face. A lot of people like to attribute to me, and I say this as many times as I can, I just read the news and opine on it. That's really
one of the things that I have criticized you for in the past is that you don't go in depth with the serious stuff and actually learn about this stuff, and you opine about it, which it's your but you're not reading it very well.
No, you're literally just going, oh, interesting. Here's my real quick take on it. In one ear, out the other, and done. And then you kind of get a little, up in arms when you do get challenged on it.
Reading what the paragraph says. Here's CNBC. Trust fund reserves used to pay beneficiaries are predicted to become insolvent by 2035.
Well, what does that mean?
Only that what comes in is able to go out.
Okay, and so what's the cuts on that?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, what comes in, what goes out. So, all right,
to increase taxes or increase the worker load.
Right, not the worker load, but the
amount of workers.
What when the trust fund runs out, what will payments be?
I don't know.
Okay. That's a pretty important aspect of this, right? I mean, this is the incuriosity that you have about
what's incurious about it.
I mean,
you're not.
He got pissed about that because he did just kind of get called stupid.
And what that means, you know that the trust fund is insolvent in 10 years. You don't know what the implications of that.
The implications are older people will not have money, and younger people have to pay more money.
When you say older people will not have money, how much less?
Well, it depends on what the government decides they're going to allocate.
No. It's already set in stone. There's no allocation. It's 85% of benefits will be paid out. There'll be a loss of 15% benefits. But it's not necessarily younger people are going to have to pay money.
New workers will have to.
No. They're always going to have to pay, hopefully, with Social Security, unless the Republicans have their ability to cut it. But you're
right. It actually says 83%. So there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, you were wrong, Sam.
I was off by 2%. You're right. But these numbers, we should say, this is also, we should be clear.
Well, I
there
accept,
are 3 things in the
accept.
actuarial state. But let me just say this about Social
But I accept your argument. You are correct, and I apologize. I just read the story. I read the news, and I made an assessment about it, as I tend to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're kind of doing it right now. You're just not listening to him. You're more focused on what you got wrong as opposed to just being like, oh, okay, so what did you just say about that? And what can I learn from it?
I think you need to on some of these bigger issues, you've clearly gone very deep into the Civil War thing, which we both agree has a very low chance of happening, somewhere above 0.
We don't really talk about Social Security all that often. I think 3 or 4 times.
It's the most important function of our government.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
We went a bit over, but I do want to talk to you about abortion. You want to do 10 minutes? We can talk about
abortion.
What are your thoughts on where we're currently at? What do you think we should be doing?
What do I think we should be doing? Well, we should at the very least be reestablishing Roe v. Wade statutorily.
I think the Supreme Court was wrong, and I believe that the 14th Amendment requires that the federal government make a ruling specifically on the issue of abortion. What that becomes, I don't know, but the concept of personhood needs to be ruled on one way or the other. So this is not a state issue. Trump is wrong about that.
But the personhood should no. I don't believe in personhood in the womb.
Right. So you think the Supreme Court should say no personhood in the womb?
Definitely.
I think the Supreme Court needs to answer one way or the other.
Well, I mean, it would put some things to rest. I don't think they're going to do that. I mean,
Trump is saying it should be a state's issue, and I believe that is absolutely incorrect.
no, I think we had an individual right that existed in this country for 50 years, and it was rolled back. We've never had anything like that whatsoever. I think it's a right that.
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, this should really be more about how the Supreme Court has completely overstepped, and now they're going after established precedent. So, like, again, now they're playing this really dangerous game of making the Supreme Court completely partisan.
That
That's why we don't trust them.
People who have babies, their
Left and right.
sovereignty over their own body, and it's both an economic issue and a personal liberty issue.
What, do you think there should be restrictions
On abortion?
Yeah.
I mean, the problem with restrictions, like for instance, we say only in the case of, let's say, a danger to a woman, or a woman's life, is that is extremely difficult to assess where that line is. And we've seen this. 2 women have died at least in Texas as a function of the abortion ban that they have there. We also know that infant mortality in the wake of the Texas thing, because there's been studies on this, increased 15% in the wake of the abortion ban there. So in general, I would say that restrictions are in practice not viable, not doable, because you end up costing women their lives. I think that to the extent that I would have restrictions, I think you need a medical provider to provide abortions, in that go past the maybe midway through the second trimester.
do you think that with elective abortion should be available up to 9 months?
If it is I think that is the safest route for women if it is done by a medical provider. Yeah.
Elective. I asked elective, to be clear.
Elective.
Meaning no reason given, no medical issues, just a woman saying, you know what,
I've carried this baby for 8.5 months and I've changed my mind.
Yeah, I think that's a fallacy. I think that if that's happening, it's happening in like maybe the tens of the millions that we have in this country.
Well, that's a little crass way of putting it. I think some women are going through some serious crises in their lives, and they may make a decision that's a bit more than just they've changed their mind. Like, for instance, where a woman is being battered by her husband, and then she realizes at month 6 that if she has this kid, he's going to continue to beat and harm the child, and she can't stay with him or something.
Well, I think, I'm not going to assess people's
it's weird. That's the, what's that called? It's the woman's choice.
reasons for having an abortion. It's not really my business, but I think that having restrictions ends up costing.
Realistically, that's what it all comes down to. It's none of our business. But you got this Christian thought process of, but God said
women's lives, and
when he didn't.
And so I would, on balance,
God committed infanticide, but they want to ignore that.
not have restrictions outside of obviously particularly as you get further into the pregnancy, requirements about medical certified medical providers.
So let's say you have a scenario: a woman goes to a Planned Parenthood, 6 months pregnant, and she just says, "I don't want to explain it. I just would like to get an abortion." Is that she should be allowed? There should be just medical professionals say, "We're going to do it. We're not going to ask you why."
I think. I think it's okay to, explore it and get a sense, as you would for any type of medical procedure.
What does that mean?
I think that there's an obligation within the context of ethical practice of medicine to
not just terminate a baby at 6 months without reason.
Well, no, I'm not saying that they should adjudicate this, but I don't think that necessarily medical providers are going to be just
No, and what Tim's saying is the reason that these women died, they could theoretically, the reason that they were seeking was technically legal and it was covered under that law. But the fact that they had to even wait and the fact that the doctors just would not even get involved, that's the problem.
Hop up here.
Also, can we just say that having a bunch of bureaucratic dudes making decisions for women is insane.
Just do this right now.
And the women joining in are usually religious.
I think there are procedures in which they do it, but essentially, as long as it's they're following, medical procedures. I don't think that somebody can, walk in here at 6 months and say to you, can you get rid of my baby? And you're allowed to do it.
No, but I'm just asking, should there be a time limit, 16 weeks?
I think that is that endangers women too much. So the answer is no. I don't believe so.
So, but that would create a circumstance, be it as rare as it may be, but where there's an 8-month abortion.
It's conceivable. I mean, certainly in the 8th or 9th month. I mean, here's the thing: in the 8th or 9th month, you can you may find that the child is going to not be viable.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about elective. Like I'm specifically trying to ask about that.
Again, dude, it's this like it's a fallacy to think that this is something that's happening like in widespread America. Like this is again something that is happening very, very, very rarely. And even if it's happening the way that he thinks, again, I think it's like maybe 1, 2, like a year.
Like, and this is what I'm talking about. Why you have women who have died in Texas, and there's probably a lot more that we're not aware of, is that imposing these restrictions is not like there's no like bulb that shows up when you say this child is 100% not viable, or that your life is 100% not threatened. Like, where's the threshold? Is it at 20%? If the woman's life is in jeopardy, it's 20%. And this is, a vague, a doctor doesn't have like some meter that they put on the, the woman and say, oh, okay, your life is at 20%. No. These are vague determinations. And when you impose these type of restrictions on, what invariably happens is women die, because in real life, not hypothetical world, in real life, the doctors are afraid of crossing a threshold where they could get imprisoned, or they could lose their license, or, conceivably the woman might too. And so I leave it up to a doctor and the patient. I don't know what constitutes even elective. Like, is it elective if there's a 20% chance I'm going to die?
No.
That's not elective.
It's not elective.
What about 5%?
That's not elective.
What about 1%?
Not elective.
Okay. We know that...
Well, that flies in the face of just any surgery, because any surgery comes with that kind of risk.
Elective is usually used to describe
0.5%.
I decided I don't want the baby anymore.
Because we know that, there's always a danger of a woman dying in childbirth, and it's above 0. So we're...
Oh, come on.
No,
we're trying to be reasonable, right? We want to solve the problem. We don't want to just say,
what's the problem?
There are conservatives who believe that if the baby is, well, for many, I don't even believe in IVF, because even a fertilized, embryo is life.
What's the problem? I understand that there are religious people who don't like what I do, but what's the problem?
The death of a baby.
Well, I would contend that we're talking about the death of a fetus. And
So the issue is whether someone determines personhood or not is a legal constitutional question that needs to be answered. For instance, in Civil War, they didn't think black people were humans who had civil rights, and that's clearly the psychotic way to view the world.
What's kind of funny? This is going to turn into just a bunch of women not having kids because they don't want to even deal with it.
But you holding the view that an unborn child is or is not an individual who holds a view, whether they are or not, is an unanswered question at the Supreme Court level that I believe sooner or later will be answered. And they may make a determination that the unborn are persons who are...
What do you think?
Man, that's tough. I tend to be traditionally pro-choice. I think that when you have...
do you think there should be restrictions on abortion?
100%.
What should those restrictions be?
Time limit for sure, but I don't know. I'm not smart enough to give you a certain amount of time.
But here's the problem: is that when in practice, that time limit ends up killing women.
Well, you've got a dying baby or a dying woman, and we're trying to figure out how to save them both.
Well, I mean,
See, it's that idealistic way of thinking where he's just like, well, we gotta figure out a way to save them both. That's the point. They can't.
If the baby can survive, why kill it?
So you're saying viability. So
yeah, viability is huge, and medical technology is rapidly expanding that. But there's still a lot of questions in how we handle it. So,
and then on top of it, this is without getting into the actual adoption agencies and the way that works, and the whole foster oh my gosh, the whole foster system. What the heck is going on with me today?
So my position is that the government can't mandate one person provide their body to another person. However, if a person provides consent in the initial phase, now they have an obligation for a certain time period. So
if you have sex and you get pregnant, you are obligated to carry that baby to term. Is that what you're saying?
I think that I'd be in favor of abortion up to a certain point.
Well, but I don't understand what the logic is there.
Logic is compromise.
Oh, so this is just a question of splitting the baby in half, literally.
Not literally splitting the baby in half. It is,
this is a dumb argument.
Government tell someone you must provide your body and blood to another person?
And you say they can up to a certain point.
The questions of consent play a role in whether you allow someone and then have an obligation to them based on the requirement. So, for instance, like rape, I 100% exception. Health of the mother.
Okay.
100% exception.
Let's say.
Okay, how about mandatory vasectomies? If we're going to play this game, why don't we just go right for it? Why don't we go right to the source?
Let's take rape.
Yeah. The woman can choose.
Okay. What establishes rape?
When a person does not consent.
Okay. how rape is a criminal term, right?
Indeed.
So you need to go through the court case.
Perhaps.
Well, I mean, perhaps.
Well,
like, can I come in and say I was raped, and that's it? All I need to do is say I was raped.
Nope.
Okay, so you need to have a court case.
No, I'd say that either. There would have to be some degree of.
Well, you keep telling me what you're not saying, but why don't you just say what you're saying? How do you establish?
No, you gotta calm down.
No, well, how do you establish what if rape is taking place?
You gotta calm down. You think that's a heated Sam Cedar?
So there's rape kits, right? And we can check for abrasions, and a woman who was raped certainly would want to get a rape kit done. I'd imagine.
Well, okay. First of all,
but if you're asking,
we know for a fact
if you're asking
that a lot of hold on, we know for a fact that a lot of women don't seek rape kits for whatever reason because they're afraid to. Okay, so if you don't get a rape kit,
we have responsibilities to ourselves and to others.
That's too bad.
And sometimes those choices are very difficult to make.
So just the existence of a rape kit.
Again, taking the agency away from the woman. What the dude? You're one of those guys that just sees your woman as an incubator.
Will establish that rape has
hell?
happened. Why do we need court cases to establish that rape has happened?
I didn't say we did. I said no.
Okay, so
a medical professional who assesses that a rape has occurred, I believe, is
what if they go in
largely
too many days after to get a rape kit?
And then there's no evidence of rape taking place?
Yeah.
That would be a restriction.
Okay, so who makes that adjudication?
If a rape took place?
Yeah.
The person administering the rape kit.
So we would put rape kit people who are administering this and look at the evidence. And do you think it's just like completely binary? Do you think like when you get a rape kit, like this person has definitely been raped or this person has definitely not been raped?
I think that we're dealing with something.
I don't think he understands how rape kits work.
Outside of the simplicity of I can go to court, it takes 6 months to a year to figure something out, which means there's a compromise. How can we come to the best determination to make sure that women are not lying, which I assume would be exceedingly rare, and we're actually going after the criminals? I do not think it's fair to put the burden on someone to perform an abortion without
Who is he protecting here?
actually taking the responsibility of yourself and saying, look, victims have responsibilities, and it's unfortunate that they're victims, but we're trying our best.
So if you don't go, so let's say, for instance, like, I mean, I don't know if you've ever, and spent any time exploring the psychological and the sort of like social pressures on people to report rape. I mean, but you're basically saying that if you don't go and get a rape kit, it's contingent upon the police department to assess this rape kit. If you go too late,
is that who's administering the rape kit?
Yeah,
it's not a doctor.
No, I mean they may have medical things.
Well, I was talking about a doctor. She goes to the doctor. She says,
he's an idiot. This is one of the dumbest takes I have heard on this ever. He is a certifiable idiot who I think he watched a few episodes of SVU and he's just like, I think that I solved the rape and abortion problem.
I've been raped. They do a kit and they say, okay. And then she says, I would not want to have a pregnancy from this.
Now, do you honestly, like, do you know how this works? It's not like it's preponderance of the evidence. I mean, it's like,
as long as it's Olivia Benson giving the rape kit. Come on, guys.
So you're basically saying the doctor gets to decide.
I am. You don't think doctors should be able to decide to give a woman an abortion?
No, I think doctors can.
Meanwhile, Ice-T comes in here. Man, you're a dumb motherfucker.
Can decide. Well, I think doctors are responsible.
This is a compromise. I'm pro-choice, but I recognize that we're not going to live in a society where one side's demanding an extreme, the other side's demanding the other.
So you
extreme.
think the rule should be if you get a
doctor makes
rape kit? What if it's somebody?
We're talking about edge cases. I mean, I don't know why you're getting so much into the edge cases.
Well,
you're the one who started with it.
I mean,
how often does this even happen?
How often do people go in and get an abortion at 8.5 months because they feel like it?
That's my point.
Many.
Yeah, very, very few.
What?
Right. So why are you bringing it up?
Oh, I thought you said many.
Well,
My
because
bad.
the people who you would create restrictions are going to
exceedingly rare and not even an issue.
So then why would we have any?
Why would you even have the restrictions?
No restrictions whatsoever.
Because what do you mean? So that babies at 8 months don't have their lives ended.
Well, I mean, what if there are reasons for it? I mean,
that's then requiring adjudication. But it's so exceedingly rare. You're arguing an edge case for a dramatic change in policy.
But
I'm not. I'm
it's
saying
not a dramatic change in policy. There, I think, like
it's kind of wild that I'm like women should be able to get abortions, but you're like, yes, but in these exceedingly rare circumstances, we should remove all restrictions because sometimes.
Excuse me, I think there's 10 states at least. I know you can look this up where there are no restrictions.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah.
So it's not. This is not some type of like radical change of policy. It exists.
Yeah, and according to you, it's just baby murder heaven.
Yes.
No, this is recent. After the end of Roe v. Wade, these are the restrictions that these changes started happening across the board.
I mean, I can understand that.
You agree with those states removing restrictions?
Like I say, yes, because I think
that's not Roe v. Wade. That's the end of Roe v.
Oh, I said at least go back to Roe v. Wade.
Didn't Roe v. Wade have a provision on viability? There was an additional case that people don't bring up. That was in the 90s.
The Casey.
Is that what it was? There was a question about viability and whether or not you can end the life.
The court said in Casey it just changed the date in which, or I should say the week in which states could then begin to impose restrictions on that right to get an abortion.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think these sort of restrictions end up killing.
The overturning of Roe and Casey resulted in states removing restrictions.
Correct. Wait, I'm sorry. Say that again.
The overturning of Roe v. Wade created the legal precedents by which states could begin to remove restrictions.
No. They could. I think they could have done that prior to that. I think they could have done that prior to that.
So the question ultimately is, I'm not going to come down as the supreme judge and just say like it must be. The right is wrong. I say, and I've told Republicans this: if I was a woman that got raped and you told me I had to have a baby, I'd blow my brains out. Like there's no fucking way you will tell me that I'm going to, by force, without my consent, give my body to somebody.
You are
else.
So he can't apply this logic to to maybe, I don't know, just saying, okay, the agency should be with the woman and the woman alone, but no, he still has to interject with his, 2 cents.
Telling that woman who got raped,
there is some degree of
that
responsibility.
you have to announce this. You need to follow certain procedures as a victim of a crime, and if you don't, we're going to force you to carry that child to term.
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
There's a responsibility we have as victims of crimes as well. And one of the problems we have in this country is that...
That's an interesting theory.
Well, it's true, right? If you're a victim and you want accountability and justice, you have
what
to go to court.
what if you make the determination that I don't want to go through what is involved with getting accountability and justice, but I also don't want to carry my rapist child? In that scenario, the woman is out of luck, according to you.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not willing to take your responsibilities,
The
responsibility, she was raped.
that the rapist has imposed upon you.
Indeed, yes.
What?
Okay, so this is what do you call this? The Rapist in Power Act?
Yeah.
I suppose you'd say that liberals have a view that they have no responsibilities at all. That there's no
I don't
requirements.
feel like I have a responsibility. I certainly don't feel that if I
This is gross.
was if I was
you're not
someone
making
who
an
could be, I am making an
The
argument.
Rapist Responsibility Act is an emotional nonsense.
No, it isn't.
We're talking about a person's responsibility to
no,
society.
that is exactly what you're
No,
suggesting.
it's drama
is tantamount.
nonsense.
No, it's not drama
It's
nonsense.
prop clipping.
No, it is not.
Yes, you are. Come on,
Dude,
You're not
I
making
don't
an
give a
argument.
shit about
Make an argument. Don't say nonsense.
The
words like
argument
rape.
is that what you are suggesting
Yeah.
is that a woman
No, your take was just that stupid.
who is raped has a responsibility that has been bestowed upon them by the rapist. The rapist has chosen you. If I shoot you in the face, I have caused you I have imparted upon you a responsibility. What you're talking about is fascistic. It is
Sam, do you think
disgusting.
that if someone commits a crime against you,
And so I'm sorry I said Rape Empowerment Act and tried to do it in a more satirical way.
your-
But what
your-
you're talking
your logic
about is
centers are
disgusting.
shutting down.
And listen, no.
You're getting overly emotional.
No, I'm not.
You are
You're
not.
No, he's actually trying to just be like, dude, what you just said there, like you're playing devil's advocate for a rapist. Good position, Tim. Great position to take. At least you're consistent.
Thinking logically anymore.
No. What you're
when a
doing
victim
is
of a crime, when
you
a
are
person is
doing
a
what you
victim of a
always
crime,
do.
they have
You're
to file.
I would hate to. Could you imagine dating him? Could you imagine arguing with him right now and having him? Oh, you're just being emotional. You got to quit being too emotional.
Trying to
paperwork to
pretend
get
like you can
accountability.
find something in here, but
You're
it
not
is
talking about the argument
absolutely
anymore.
nonsense. Yes, it is.
You are no longer
Oh my God, I can see it. He totally does this in his relationship.
You're talking about the issue
because
nor the law.
everybody sees. Oh, I am
You are getting
definitely
overly
talking
emotional.
about it. I don't.
You're talking about my person. You're doing ad hominem.
Allegedly.
You've lost it.
No. Here's
Sam,
the point.
let's start with
You're
the law.
so full of crap.
You see,
it's
here you go.
amazing.
You can't even make an argument anymore, can you?
I don't need to because
You can't even make an argument on it anymore because I'm just pissing you off. He's actually doing the clip thing that he was accusing Sam of doing, where Sam was just trying to be like, no, I was actually trying to make a funny. You actually doubled down on your stupid take, and now I really have to call you out on it.
Everybody who's watched this, no. Everybody who's watched this knows that
watching, you have an emotional
you're
breakdown on
saying
camera.
that a rape victim has a responsibility that has been bestowed upon them by the rapist. It's gross. It's disgusting.
You are having an emotional breakdown right
is.
now.
I'm not having an emotional breakdown right now.
Do you think the
I'm
police
getting,
should be...
No, he's getting a point across that honestly you're uncomfortable taking because you may have realized that you just took one of the dumbest positions I have ever heard on this topic.
Oh, you want to wait?
Because I'm thinking of my daughter.
Here we go.
I'm thinking of my daughter.
Here it is.
And I'm thinking of the idea that a
Here
rapist
it
could
is.
force.
Here it is. Even though I would totally do the same thing and plan on doing the same thing because this is just how I work.
her to do something
Sam,
that
you're spiraling.
No,
You're
I'm not
spiraling.
No.
You're spiraling.
Tim,
you're not even
afraid
stopping talking
because you just
you're not even
found
stopping
out.
talking.
You never
You're gonna,
think out
you're gonna,
anything that you
we're gonna say something.
You're
We're gonna
upset.
talk.
Sam's nailing it
We're
there.
gonna
I
keep just
just
talking about
faced you
nonsense.
in front of all of your
Are you
audience.
gonna wait for you prop
The
clipping?
Rapist
You're prop clipping,
Empowerment
Sam.
Act.
You're prop clipping.
I don't even know what that means.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do. You're
What does
prop
it
clipping
mean?
again.
What is prop
You're not
clipping?
arguing abortion anymore.
What is prop clipping?
You said, Tim, you're full of crap. You're not arguing abortion anymore. You
Because
disgust me. Oh, rape, blah, blah. You stopped
You're
arguing.
saying
you
that a
stopped
rapist-
arguing and you started doing performative garbage for the camera.
No, I'm
You
not
want to
doing
have a
performative
discussion, Sam?
Dude, the best part of
you
this
want to have a discussion,
was
or are you going to keep
tying
talking?
you in
he's literally just he's gish galloping right now, where he's just do you want to talk? Do you want to talk? I mean, I know you're talking, and I know you're trying to make a point, but do you actually want to make a different point? Do you want to make a different point that doesn't make me seem so stupid? Come on, Sam, you're just getting emotional.
Nuts about the idea that a rapist can force a woman.
Here you go again.
Oh, dude, at this point, I just spit in his face. Fuck this guy.
Here you go again. You're making things up.
I'm reiterating.
Prop clipping.
I am reiterating.
This is why I can't do debates like this, because honestly, like this is where it gets so bad faith, where you're just like, okay, now you're just being an asshole.
Prop clipping.
I am reiterating.
Like, and the thing is, you can't just say that. You can't just be like, dude, you're a fucking asshole.
You're getting overly emotional. You're getting heated. You're finger pointing. You're throwing slurs and name calling. You're full
a slur.
Well, forgive me. You're so full of crap. You disgust me. But that's not
honestly.
You want to have
Wow. See, and then he does the victim complex thing. Oh, could you imagine dating this guy?
Be honest with you.
You want to have a discussion or get an emotional breakdown?
You know what? I am going to continue with the so-called emotional breakdown because honestly,
his baby's mama could have fun with that one, because oh boy, I have a feeling that there's a Steven Crowder coming up in his life.
I think
that's right.
No, I honestly
let's solve our problems by Sam just freaking out and having emotional breakdowns on camera.
I honestly think that what you do is so.
If that's what you're calling an emotional breakdown, you're making yourself look really stupid.
Damaging.
Oh no!
And this
here he goes.
Whole notion that you would allow.
It took 2 hours and 40 minutes for you to break.
Yeah,
you
this
broke. Sam,
why are you keeping me from talking?
Because you haven't let me talk one time.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Victims of crimes who want accountability have responsibilities.
What if they don't want accountability? What if they don't want to put themselves on the stand and have to point out that guy? Okay, but they have to carry the baby, right? According to you.
If they don't want accountability, then this is a.
Then they have to carry the baby.
This is reality.
Say it.
A woman.
Say it. If they
I will
don't
say it.
He can't even stand up for the thing that he said because
he's
such a coward.
He's such a coward.
If a woman does not want accountability for her rape, she will carry that baby.
She has to.
She has to, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, up to 15 weeks.
That's the prop clip I want right there.
Up to 15 weeks.
I mean, I think we have come to an agreement.
That women can get abortions if they're so choosing without any restrictions up to a certain amount of time. And then after viability would have to...
They don't want to pursue their rapists in public in a public setting, and they don't want to go through that.
Sam, you're having an emotional breakdown. You've stopped listening.
And as somebody who can rewind this, do you guys want to?
What's
I know
said.
you guys don't want to.
You start getting angry.
Y'all hate when I rewind.
Insulting. You're disgusting. How dare you? This is, and you know
what? Don't think saying
Sam,
to me that you're prop clipping. I don't know what that means, but
so it's when you stopped arguing abortion, finger pointing and waving your hands and saying, "I tied you in knots" in front of the camera.
Yes.
And this is why people don't invite you on their show.
I don't give a shit.
I know.
I'll tell you something.
That's why you don't get invited on shows.
No, I
you don't care. I know you don't care. I'm not saying
you don't care. I honestly, like this.
Honestly, what I'm seeing is that you guys are a bunch of babies. Holy crap. If this is somebody getting emotional, dude, I feel sorry for the times that you actually have to have an actual fight.
You start the show, I don't want to talk politics. I want to talk about how you said mean things about me before.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to get that. Oh, wait.
Yeah, your WWE politics.
No. Listen,
we're talking about how do we effectively have law on abortion. That should be.
Whoopsie.
A woman can do whatever she wants up to 15, 16 weeks, maybe even 22. I don't know what the time limit is. But if the baby is viable, there has to be accountability.
None of what you're saying is meaningful at all.
That there should be a time restriction on
15, 22. You're just throwing around numbers.
Because there's a debate on how long that duration should be.
Oh my
but my position is that pre-viability, I don't know, some say 22, some say 26.
And my addressing you is...
All right. There's very few times that I want to use the R word. I want to use it so bad right now.
That the restrictions
you're and you're disgusting and emotional breakdown.
Yeah. My emotional breakdown to you is that when you put these restrictions on women, they in practice are impossible to actually execute. And you have shown that by saying that if a woman refuses to go in front of a court...
I never said that. This is what I said, Sam. For the love
if
of
it doesn't take accountability, what does accountability mean?
A rape kit.
Okay, so if a rape kit...
You're saying I was raped with no proof and no evidence, and therefore I should go in a 6-month
They've got to go in within 24 to 36 hours and say to a doctor, I was raped. And if they don't do that, then they're forced to carry the rapist baby.
Depending on what you want to happen in society, there are things you have to do.
This doesn't make any sense anyway, because you're not, the baby isn't going to be at that viability by the time that they need that rape kit. So this is the dumbest thing I have ever fucking heard.
Sometimes you may not want to have to do them, but this idea you have that people...
And he's sitting there acting like he's doing a gotcha.
What you're proposing is that the state should be able to enforce crimes against people without evidence.
What?
What?
You want accountability, but you do not want...
I want accountability. I just don't want this woman to have to carry a rapist baby.
Right, so this is very 5th grade, right? There is a legal system that exists.
What,
We have
the
to work
way
within
that
the
you
legal system
keep
because
the
we have
way you're
compromises and a social
thinking?
contract with other people. The idea that I can take action against another person without proper adjudication is fascistic. What we have to do is figure out what are the terms for each individual
Who's
circumstance.
the other person you're talking about?
So we're the baby
Oh, so
at 6 months.
You consider a baby a person at 6 months. Let me ask
Viability.
you this. If
Well, I consider a baby a person the whole time.
a
but I-
fetus, a person the whole
life
time.
begins at conception. But the state doesn't
Life
have,
begins at conception.
but yes, but the state doesn't
You
have
believe
the,
that in the context of
the
immigration?
state doesn't have the authority to
Now that was a gotcha.
tell a person when they must give their body to another person. There's arguments over consent, in which case
Like, just
rape is an
brushes it
exception.
off.
However, I'm pro-choice.
Okay.
So what we're talking about now,
What is the point of talking to Tim Pool? What is the point? He just says populist bullshit to make it's like to make like one person in that minute like, oh, I think I'm making this person happy. Oh, but I want to make this person happy. Well, I want to make this person happy. Now nobody can be mad at me.
because make sure you include this in the context, and I'm glad you're here. I can say it to you is a woman up to pre-viability, in my opinion, should be allowed to get an abortion if she so chooses because of the impossibility of properly adjudicating anything in between. I think that's where, when I say you're having a breakdown, it's because I don't think you're listening to what I'm saying. After viability, we're talking about extenuating circumstances where a baby that could survive on its own. There's now an issue there where the question becomes, why kill the baby? If we're talking about a period where we're not sure the baby's viable or not, we're wondering why the woman carried the baby this long.
Because honestly, it's none of your fucking business. That's why. If they don't want a fucking baby and they don't want a family, then that's their choice. I'm really tired of this whole oh, well, I'm a better person because I see the baby as a person and I want to protect that person until it's born, and then I want to just sit there and say that you're a loser and that the baby's a loser and that we shouldn't help with anything in social programs because that's just how it works.
The issue is not so black and white for you to just say.
Well,
that-
you're saying this is about viability, not time limit.
Yeah, I'm.
You keep
traditional
vacillating back and forth. Maybe you don't realize this, but
So,
there's completely.
if you
everything
can't
you're
understand,
saying
I'll
is
explain it to you.
inconsistent with it.
pro-choice.
with
What
you're saying.
week is viability?
What week is viability?
Yes,
I mean,
it
I think
varies.
there's some debate about that.
Agreed. My point is, I don't know the point at which we as a society will determine it's going to be 16 or 22 or 26. I'm not a scientist or a medical doctor. I agree. There's an issue where if the baby can survive on its own, there's no reason to kill it.
Well, would you be in favor of a woman getting a C-section in 4 or 5 months just because she doesn't want to carry the baby anymore?
If the baby can survive on its own, my position is typically the woman can make that choice, as long as the baby's not being killed. But so you know how they perform abortions after that point?
How they perform abortions after what?
Like there's varying degrees of how abortions are performed. So
Yes.
the question I have is this. Let me put it this way.
Like dilation and extraction? Are you talking about in
Yeah,
terms
yeah.
of
My
yes.
position largely is we've got two real distinct worldviews on this one that are extreme ends. They neither agrees with each other, and I'm trying to navigate in between to get people to be like, look, there's got to be some standard.
The Gandhi who brought us all together, Tim Pool, guys.
Dude, these are the
He removed his beanie and we all just collectively we had to put our hands on and we felt the energy and it passed through us and world peace was obtained.
ideas behind anti-abortion are primarily religious fundamentalism, and it is about maintaining a gender hierarchy. And the idea that you can negotiate, you're basically taking Hillary Clinton's position from 2004.
Probably.
And it doesn't work that way.
Probably.
The fundamentalists who are pushing this
job.
ideology, and it's largely fundamentalist, and if not directly, certainly downstream from a religious fundamentalism, they're not interested in your compromise. It is, and the proof of it is,
Not interested in yours.
I'm not compromising. The proof
neither
of
are
it
they.
is after
That's the
50 years, there was a compromise. It was Casey, exactly what you're talking about, which is why when you asked me at the beginning, I said, at the very least, go back to Roe v. Wade and maintain those protections. But that equilibrium was not enough for the right-wing Republican Party. And so therefore, that's where we're at now. That's the end of story.
And now we have states with no restrictions, and we have states with absolute restrictions.
There was a compromise, and the right wing in this country did not want it. That's it. That's why this is this is why a debate. And you have an individual right that has cost the lives of multiple women across the country. It is increased infant mortality, like I said, at least in Texas, by 15%. And I think it also, and I think it's much harder to measure this, but it subjugates women in this country because it basically says you have less rights to have a bottle.
Yeah, you're a second-class citizen. You're an incubator. Just because you happen to be born a woman with that womb, then that agency goes to whatever child comes up next. You don't count.
Autonomy, and that's just the beginning.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's insane.
Yeah, if as I stated, if I was a woman and I was raped and I was forced to carry the baby, I'd blow my brains out.
He is one of the dumbest motherfuckers I have ever heard.
And so that's why I say up to a certain
Seriously.
point, I'm pro-choice.
Hold-
to a certain time period. Because I agree, after the baby
How does anybody hear that and go like, yeah?
can live on its own, I don't understand why you kill it.
If there was a way to have the type of restrictions you're talking and have a child be viable, outside of the womb and all of this, but in reality, that's not the way it works. These things don't work the way that you're talking about. The rape exceptions,
And you're gonna to be fair, this issue is the razor's edge. There's no middle. It's one side or the other.
It has to be in the way that it is in practice, and frankly, but these are religious fundamentalists, and they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop with abortion. They will come for IVF. Of course they will.
I would also make the argument that I don't think the left will stop with their ideology either. Both are going to.
I mean, listen. You started this by saying Obama didn't even in case Roe v. Wade in statute. I mean, the left.
My issue with that was Democrats and Republicans both will argue they're for something, but then use it as a wedge issue.
The left was essentially, as a political matter, was fine with Roe v. Wade and Casey, for that matter.
Yeah.
I mean, to the extent that there was any talk about abortion rights.
No, but according to like the farthest like writers, like honestly, they want to make it like totally legal to grill a baby.
Amongst Democrats and the left, it was.
Like, yeah, that's what the liberals want. They want to go have BBQs
to lock it in because the right is coming for the.
I want my baby back.
That's right, and they have now done it. So I mean, the false equivalency you're making here is literally that.
What
false
equivalency?
Well, the idea that the left is pushing.
I'm cheeky.
This agenda beyond. No, what's happening is there was a compromise.
The right's got their agenda items, the left has their agenda items.
I guess
they're both pushing them endlessly.
Well, I mean, everybody's are political animals, and they want
barbecue sauce.
They have their program.
Right. So which is me agreeing with you. You say Republicans won't stop, and I say I agree on the issues the left cares about. They won't stop either.
Well, that's true, and I think people make a determination whether they want a religious fundamentalist party to dictate their lives or not,
or an ideological fundamentalist party.
Well, no, the fundamentalism is an ideology as well. It's just it happens to be born in religion and
in religion. Yeah.
Last question, because we've gone over. I do appreciate you hanging out. Why do you think it is so many former liberals are now leaving the left?
You mean Anna Kasparian? Like one person?
I mean, people switch parties.
Dave Rubin, I mean, there's a reason that he covers Dave Rubin so extensively, you know.
And ideologies.
Jimmy Dore.
The way around.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well,
wait.
Like, where's a big right?
Oh, Hunter Avalon.
Wing pundit who joined the
Xander Hall.
Network,
I got two.
Anna Kasparian announcing she's leaving the left. You know what I mean? Or Dave Rubin.
I mean, listen, if you want to say that these are like the intellectual pillars of...
No, certainly not. I'm saying something's causing an emotional rift that makes people not want to be on the left anymore.
Well, I would suggest it's probably cash. I mean, like you said, she said as much as far as I know in the past on DYT.
She said she would make more money by...
Yes. And it was literally when she was like, oh, yeah, Hassan makes how much? Wait, what? Huh?
Being not leftist?
I don't know if she said that. But I know that on her show on TYT, she's complained about not making money. I don't know why she's
still on TYT. Like, aren't they going to lose members who are progressives?
I got to be honest with you. I don't really pay that much attention to like showbiz.
Well, so outside of her, why are there so many people? Like, you had the meme from Colin Wright where it shows the left going all the way to the far left and liberals being like, what's happening?
I don't know who Colin Wright is.
Sure. There's many prominent personalities who used to be liberals and now identify as moderates or disaffected liberals or post-liberal.
Well, disaffected liberal, post-liberal, like all of that, they're still on the left at that point. Then they're just center left. You're kind of just negating that. You're acting like they just went full Trumper. Dave Rubin.
Like you're saying like a substantial amount to like sway an election or
Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg. I'm not going to call them progressives.
Why are billionaires becoming conservatives?
I didn't say they're becoming conservatives.
Why are billionaires
pushing for a conservative agenda? Oh, gee, why? What?
Previously supporting Democrat politicians.
What?
Now aligning with...
Well, I would say when you're talking about Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, I would say Lena Khan, head of the FTC. I would say John Cantor at the DOJ antitrust.
Why? So
I think
I
money.
agree with you.
Money,
Absolutely.
money is
I think
threatened by any type of sort of liberal stuff.
But why did they support Democrats before?
Why did they?
Yeah.
Well, because I think the Democrats went through a period of neoliberalism, and Joe Biden, frankly, ended that. There's a ton of never-Trumpers in the Republican Party.
I agree.
I don't necessarily want them to influence our policy.
I'll completely agree with you on the.
I disagree with your assessment.
I was about to say, wait a minute. He just totally negated Liz Cheney, like all of the never-Trumper Republicans that are voting for Kamala Harris.
Right,
like,
no, you're
Dave
completely
Rubin
right
and Anna
about
Kasparian is some type of measure of stuff.
But you've got people like Eric Weinstein, for instance, who says the craziness primarily coming from the left. Well, you can laugh at them all you want, but
I do laugh at him. I think he's ridiculous. This guy works for Peter. The guy who works for Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
The CEFO of Peter Thiel's.
Okay, Brett Weinstein,
the
evolutionary biologist.
The
evolutionary biologist.
Why? The guy who was mad about pronouns.
That's not him. No, that's Jordan Peterson.
Oh, I get confused on which.
Brett Weinstein was the professor who got ousted from a university over, I think it was a racial disparity.
Oh, he's the anti-vaxxer guy.
No.
Yeah. He's the COVID pandemic, the one who's with his wife. He does a show, right?
Well, I don't know if that's.
Oh yeah.
I'm speaking.
Oh, I've seen this guy. He's completely insane.
Sure. So what do you think happens?
It's also a Zionist.
For him specifically, going back to when he was at university in Pacific Northwest, or.
You want me to make some type of generalization about one guy who's now?
No, I've named several, and I keep naming them, but it's like I just don't.
You've named 5 YouTubers.
That Nick Christopherson, what's his name? Nick Christakis.
I don't know who that is.
Well,
I've never heard of these people either. Like, dude, what?
Naming 5 people to me and attributing it to some mass.
Why do you think there is a trope that people are leaving the left? Why did C-SPAN have a segment where people called in saying that?
Dude, they had that back in 2016 with leaving the right. You're like the post-Gamergate era. You're being totally disingenuous with this.
According to the Democratic Party, the left has gone nuts.
And honestly, very incurious.
There are clicks. Are you
because you're not actually asking him anything. You have a preconceived notion that you would like to dispel to him, but nothing past that.
Are you asking me? Do I think that there is a movement?
You can just say money. I mean, I was fine with that answer.
Well, I'm not even sure I understand. I mean, I can say in those specific instances, but I'm not even sure that that's a phenomenon, to be honest with you.
So
I think this country has moved to the left significantly. I can tell you, like even at Occupy, there was no ideological sort of cohesion in Occupy.
No.
I think relative, like the idea that Bernie Sanders could be a senator. I interviewed Bernie Sanders in 2004. Maybe it's just because I have a longer, timeline. But I interviewed Bernie Sanders in 2004 when he was a congressman from Vermont. And I remember saying, like, if we could get, 200 Bernie Sanders, that would be amazing. But I was like, this guy's going to be a backbencher his entire career. And the idea that, 12 years later, he nearly wins the Democratic nomination is a huge indication of a move to the left.
What do you think it would mean if Trump wins the popular vote?
I would be shocked.
Yeah, I'd be shocked.
It would mean that there are more people who voted for Trump.
But you don't think it's indicative of any kind of national mandate, like worldview?
Very factual. Thank you.
What would you say Donald Trump's ideology is?
Trumpism.
Right.
There's got to be a new word for it.
Right.
People like to say fascism or whatever, but these are just archaic terms.
I mean, my biggest worry about Donald Trump is the Republican Party, but that's submerged, I think, from most people's voting. Your average person voting, they're just making a different choice between 2 personalities, largely. So I would say that is not indicative of an ideological shift as much as it is an aesthetic one.
I think there's RCP has Trump up 0.3. I don't know if it means anything. 2020, Biden was up 8. Some say that RCP is no good because they like to use Rasmussen, but I would just say that
we don't need to argue about polls because we're going to know in 4 days.
Right. It's trending towards in all of the data and prediction models.
Listen, for every RCP thing that you can say, I can come up with
I agree.
A significant amount of data that shows that there's reason to believe that the pollsters are overcorrecting from mistakes that they've made in the past.
100%.
So I would say,
and poly market is a prediction market, which means Trump might win by 0.1, but they're showing 65. It doesn't mean anything.
Poly market is based on cryptocurrency.
Yes, it's also there was just a report that there's a ton of sort of fake money going in there. It's an offshore thing that is owned by Peter Thiel and
French guy put in 30 million, I think.
Yeah.
I love how Peter Thiel is now like the.
I think it's there's people
Nobody
feel
knows.
that there is value in creating that,
Oh my
that
God.
sense that maybe it's a foregone conclusion. I personally think
The
that
guy.
a lot of it is about Trump trying to gin up what you talked about earlier, a January 6th response. If he loses by creating the expectation that he's definitely going to win, and
George Soros.
I think it's going to be close, but I don't think that it's in any way close to even being a foregone conclusion about either one of them.
Completely agree. I have no idea what's going to happen. Everybody thinks they know. I learned my lesson. Sam, I do appreciate you coming on. This has been fun. We went an extra hour. Thanks for hanging
I
out.
hope I get my plane.
Sorry, man. I apologize.
right.
We'll be back tonight at youtube.com/TimCast.
Immediately he's going to his ticket. He's like, I might have to adjust this. Wow. All right. So number one, that was a lot more cordial than I was expecting it to really be. I thought there were going to be more actual emotional flare-ups. But realistically, this also kind of proves like that number one, Tim Pool was being kind of the bitch there. Like he was doing that thing where he's like, this is why you don't get invited on shows. This is why you don't get invited on shows. When Sam was actually just kind of like being like, no, dude. So you said that you kind of support the rapist in this scenario. Therefore, I'm going to call you on that. You're for rapist rights? Because that's what you just described. And immediately he realized that he did do that. And he was just like, wait, oh, now you're just using euphemisms and blah, 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 blah. He's such an asshole. But Sam, oh my God, he killed it. That was awesome. Actually kind of came out of this with a little bit more respect for Tim Pool. I hate to admit it. He's not as bad as I have, kind of deemed him, but it's not like I'm going to be watching him like on the regular or anything like that. And I do think that he is legitimately one of the dumbest people in this space. Like, especially near the end there, it was getting really hard to listen to, especially his takes on abortion. That was just fucking wild. So, anyway, I appreciate you guys sticking through this one, especially if you watch part 2 and stuck through that. You guys are heroes to me. I really appreciate you guys being here. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know exactly how you feel about his last take there on abortion and, holding the victim to account. Like, that was just, what? That was so wild. But anyway, also subscribe, trying to get to 1,000. I really appreciate you guys that have subscribed already. You guys are, again, heroes. Love you. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.